Now I want to explain you quickly the different menus that we have so that you can do some adjustments. So this is our main menu. On this menu you can do all the main settings without changing to any other options menu. So what you see here is that's the first bonding values and that's the second bonding values. So that means first bond means the ultrasonic, time and force, which is set here to 200, 200 and 300, and ultrasonic 2, which is here 500, 200 and 300, and so we need a little bit more ultrasonic power to do the second wedge bond with the ball bonding tool. In the middle you have different programs. You can just by tapping, double click, you can change different programs, what we will not do at the moment. And you can also type in a name, so that's like typing on your mobile phone, typing characters. And so for each program you can give a name. So at the moment we have the name 25 ball, so that means that's a program for 25 micron of gold wire ball bonding. Where in the ball bonding mode you can change the mode easily by just pressing this button, the moment ball bonding, and here you can choose between manual, step and semi-automatic. And then here we have clamp, so here you can manually open and close the clamp. This is required to when you want to move the clamp to the side, then you open the clamp. So red window means the clamp is open, green means the clamp is closed. You can always, when you're bonding the first bond didn't really work, then you can reset. There's two ways of resetting your bond. One way is just by looking through the microscope and not looking on the screen. You press bonding, do the first bond, and then you press on the same time one of the feed buttons. It makes double click and it quits. So then it's again on bond 1. Another way is that you do your bonding and you see it's not really working, so now we're at bond 2. You want to return, you press here, it will move up again and goes to bond 1 directly. So these two ways are quite important to know, so you always are able to reset during bonding so that you don't have to set your second bond if the first didn't stick. Another important points are up here. So this is tail step. Tail step means we have here two buttons. This button closer to the front of the bonder is feed up, and that's feed down. And with these you can move the tail up or down. That means if you don't have enough wire sticking out, especially for wedge bonding, that's very, very useful to adjust your tail. And this is the definition of 20 micron tail. So there's always stepping 20 micron up or down. The second one here is the loop height. So that's 1,000 micron moving up after the first bond, so that your loop height is 1,000 micron high. There's one or two buttons that I haven't explained so far. One, this is the height setup. That's a very important one. So always when you change your sample, and your sample will have a different height, then you can use this button. So that means I will directly show you what happens. You press the button, it will say move to first bond and press bond button. So that means now our first bond will be somewhere in this area. I press the button, you can see that the bond head is slowly moving down, it has a touch down, and it will measure this level. Then it says move to second bond and press bond button. We will do so. Now maybe you want bond on a stair, so you adjust to that and it will measure the stair automatically. It has a third point that it notes here, press bond button for measure EFO height. So now we have to measure this EFO, so the distance between the tooltip and the EFO. Because sometimes you have different tool lengths or the tool is different, adjusted in a different way. So it's important to measure out this distance so that to have in order to have the perfect distance between those two. So now it says set up OK and we're ready to go. So this is a procedure you have to perform when you change your sample. So next menu that I'm going to show you is the advanced settings menu, that you only will need if you really have to change something in some parameters that are not in this menu. So there's two levels. So there's a setup screen and a MISC screen. On the setup screen, you can see your settings. It means you can again here do your height setup. And the advantage of doing the height setup here is that you will see the values and you can also later on correct the values. So that means by pushing this button, the bonder will go down to the actual measured value, and you can always change the value so that if you want to make it higher or even closer, then you can manually readjust your first surge height, also your second surge height. Then you can also readjust your work height. So if you want to make a higher work height, work height that is closer to the sample, you can manually change it here. The work height, that's another button. You can here, you can see if you press it, that's the level where the bonder starts and ends your bonding. You can change that, but that's especially nice feature for wedge bonding. For ball bonding, the work height should be fixed because you always want to have this nice fixed distance between EFO and the work height, which was adjusted before.
Zeig mir, was the EFO is.
So here you can see just to see what the EFO is. So now the EFO fits neatly under the tool. So there's a very defined, very small distance between the two. So next option here is ultrasonic test button. So if you need some ultrasonic, for example, if the wire is stuck in the tool, you can start the ultrasonic. So you can see it makes a small noise when I put my tweezer here. And so the ultrasonic can be useful because there is a vibration and it can then release the wire which is stuck in the tool, can help you. That's automatically, after a few seconds, it will turn off again. Then we will continue. We have the EFO, so that these settings all are for this electronic flame off unit. So you can release it manually. So by pressing this button, EFO start, you can manually release it. That's helpful, for example, if it didn't work or you feed the wire, or in some cases, if you don't have a ball in the beginning when you start. So you can manually run the EFO. So that's the power, so you can regulate the power. We usually work with 80% with 25 micron wire. If you work with thicker wire, you increase the value to 90 or 100. You can generally turn it off. Why? Because this spark has about 1000 volts, so it's not the nicest thing to touch it. And if you work on the EFO and you don't turn off the system, you can manually turn off this EFO. Next point here is table tier. That's the mode how the wire is torn off in the end, and so it must be table tier with ball bonding, and here you can define the length of the movement after the second bond. So then we have still another menu, that's the MISC menu. The MISC menu has some options. In the first line you can see three options to save programs. So you have save as, backup USB all, and restore USB all. So save as is pretty easy, so you can save your current program under a different number. which can help to duplicate programs and to change them. So if you want to have a test series running, you can quickly make save as 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you don't have to readjust every single parameter. Another one is backup USB all, so you can make a complete backup of all your programs, and you can move to a different bonder if you have another HB10. Or you can also, if you have had a backup and you, for example, have lost some programs, then you can restore them. But you always have to watch out because it restores all programs, not a single program. This is light adjustment. We usually run the light with 75%, but you can see if I put the light on 100%, it's much brighter. Then we have a stitch. So there's two different options how to run the stitch. So either the stitch bond repeats the bond number 2, or it repeats the bond number 1. So that's the mode you can change in between, or you can choose in between. Here we have 2 job counters. So one fixed counter which can't be resetted, and the current job counter which can be resetted by just keeping it pressed, and then after 2 seconds it will erase to 0. So you can see this is a pretty brand new bonder which has already or has only 72 bonds so far. Here we have 2 more. We have motor speed. So at the moment our motor runs with 100%. If you generally need slower movements to prevent vibrations, to work very careful, you can slow down the motor by pressing and then changing the value to 50 or 70%. And then another point is you can change the search speed. So at the moment the search speed is at 20%, so that means the final from going down to the search height to bonding, this moving is done with 20% of the maximum motor speed. And you can increase this value or even slow down this value for very sensitive parts. Sometimes it's very useful to put this to 10%, for example. Okay, now we can go back to bonding. Just one last comment. So you can always bond. So that means also even in this menu we can do some bonds. So you don't have to be in the main menu, in the main screen to do your bonds, but you can always do fine adjustments. For example, if you're in the setup menu, you can do fine adjustments and do bonding. If we don't have any further settings here, we go back and we're in the main screen and we're ready to do our job.